You are listening to the Airline Selection Podcast, where we bring you insights to help you succeed at airline selections. This podcast is brought to you by Airline Selection Program. Please welcome your host, airline captain and major airline recruiter, Guillaume Debauchez.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Airline Selection Podcast, where we share advice and expert tips from our guests on how you can lead a happier pilot life and, of course, succeed at your airline selection. So today we're with Dana again, part of our psychology series. Dana, how are you doing today?
Hi, Guillaume. Thank you. I'm doing fine. I've been looking really forward to this video. How about you?
Yeah, I'm great. I can't wait to answer your questions and contribute.
Perfect. Then maybe I can introduce you to today's topic, which is going to be fulfilling your potential as a pilot. So today we can talk about where does your motivation come from where did it come from to become a pilot, and how do you keep yourself going? Are you doing this for, let's say, because you're very passionate about flying, or there may be outside cues why you're doing that? So let me start with a question to you. When you think about this phrase, fulfilling your potential, what has it looked like for you personally? Has it always been about, what was it about your motivation? Was it always about flying a bigger aircraft, or was there something else?
I always dreamt of being an airline pilot for as far as I can remember, and it started at the age of 7 or 8, and I was starting to collect airplane models. And I remember I shared this in another video where a friend of my dad's gave me this red airplane, and it looked really nice. It stayed in my bedroom for so long, along with all of the other models. And then it really kicked in the first time that I got onto a plane as a passenger. And interestingly, I was a UM, so I was without my parents. My parents were on holiday in Athens, and because they did some heavy touring, they didn't want me to be there. I was too young, so I just joined for when they were in Athens. And I got into this Air France plane. And remember when the stewardess, did the safety demonstration, I got my life jacket out, and because I was so excited, which caused a lot of laughter and also a lot of problems. And I managed to get them to serve me a Coke or a coffee. I don't remember, but something forbidden for me. So airplanes were exciting, but what was more exciting was just, I remember when it started moving and looking outside the window, and when the engine started, when the thrust got applied, I was like, oh my God, this was like so exciting. And after that, every single flight that was like this for me, it's been a passion. As you know, this passion was broken for me because of an eye exam I had this 0.25 astigmatism. You probably know the story. Essentially, when I did my class 1, 17 years later, they told me, no, there's nothing. And even then, of course, it wouldn't have precluded flying. But anyway, that's where the motivation came. It was this emotion. And for many of us, that's what it is. We feel a strong emotion when we see an airplane or when we are inside an airplane. For me, it's mostly when I'm inside the airplane, in the cockpit, or when it starts moving. And like many people who are passionate about something, you're ready to sacrifice quite a lot for that. And you don't even think sacrifice. I'll just do anything to get there and to make it happen. And of course, the way that I grew up, I was born in the early 70s. And when I grew up, it was the airlines that made the news, made my dreams alive, were Air France, British Airways, Lufthansa, these large airlines, the American airlines as well. But the two that had the Concorde, Air France and BA, they made you dream more than the others, for sure. And as a French person, Air France was the one that made me dream the most. So I always envisaged myself being a major airline pilot, because in those days there were no low-cost airlines. So that, you would dream of that. And so I dreamt of getting into one of these airlines one day. That's what it was. And it meant, yes, starting with a smaller airplane and then flying the 747. That's what I wanted. Actually, I was going to go on the 747 at BA, and they pulled me off my 747 bid to put me on the 777, because I'd bid for the 777 the year before. And I was very disappointed, because I wanted to have a staircase on my airplane. And that was a motivation for me, you see, to have 2 stories on my airplane. Anyway,
Mhm.
for many of us, it will be that. And if your motivation is different, such as, well, it's a job where you can make good money, if you're in the right place at the right time and you start young enough, or any other motivation, it could be that you are going to find this job doesn't meet your expectations. It's a job that does come with sacrifice, and this sacrifice can only be accepted and lived with well when this motivation overcomes it almost on every flight,
Mhm.
right? So, hope I
Yeah.
answered your question.
Yes, and actually here I would also like to share more of like a personal note
Mm,
because, well, I might have mentioned it in previous podcasts, but I come from a family of pilots. And so that means that although my mom was a stewardess, my dad and also my grandpa was a pilot. And I
yeah.
remember that they were really pushing me to become a pilot too. And I
Mm,
told them that, okay, that might not be the lifestyle for me, but I really wanted to get into aviation. So here I am right now. But as you mentioned, that there are different kinds of motivation, how people land their dream career. So, for example, we talked about how if you're doing something as a job because you're curious, you feel joy, or you feel that this is the passion, as you described how you became an airline pilot. But there is also when people do something because they're driven by these external rewards. For example, the salary that you mentioned, or maybe even prestige. I think the best is if people feel a mix of both, because if you only do
interesting.
a certain, yeah, because if you do a certain job only because, let's say, you have this extrinsic motivation, so when you're doing it for the money or for prestige, it's a good driver, but I don't think that can be the only thing that motivates you. So having a mix of these both, when you think about, does it really align with my goals or does it really energize me? I think these are very great questions to ask yourself, and to answer honestly when you're thinking about your job. And hopefully you will get a very motivating and energizing response.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, just to say on the money topic, the airline pilot career, unless you join it as an ab initio, and if you have an ab initio selection at the moment, succeeding it is such a huge head start in your life. Okay, so you know that we're here to help you with that, but it's a big difference going into an ab initio program where you'll be, yeah, for some of these ab initio programs you have to pay a little bit or through salary reduction. Some of them are completely free. But more importantly, you're going to start right away. Your seniority is going to occur, and that's the best way to do it. But as the more conventional path, that has been the more conventional path since the late 90s until now. Before it wasn't the case. Before it was a state-sponsored path. Nobody paid until the mid 90s. And now again, these sort of cadet programs have come and helped a good portion of the flying population of tomorrow to not have to pay. But if you have to pay, it is a big outlay, a lot of debt for quite a while. Also, you as a co-pilot, not many airlines will pay you all that well because at the end of the day, the salary is a matter of market fit, and some airlines, some legacy airlines pay well, some low-cost airlines pay a really low wage. And if you never succeed to get into a better airline, your wage could stay quite low for quite a while. Once you become a captain, you will earn a good wage, but maybe you're not going to get to a really nice financial independent position because with these unstable jobs come unstable living conditions, comes having to move all the time, come tax implications, come lots of problems. Okay, so this career could lead you to make a lot of money. It could also, a lot, could make you to live a good life, I would say. It could also get you to not live such a good life. And then you'll go like, do I really still want to get up at 4:30 in the morning that often to make what is not that good an income overall? Because let's compare things a bit. I know I'm monopolizing the microphone again, but if you compare
Oh,
a pilot with other professions that are classified as being fairly highly educated, like company executives, like maybe lawyers or doctors, it's being regarded as being at the same level, although pilots study only for 3 years. But we do a lot of training internally once we're there. So people often wonder, but come a point, you have a level of training that others don't undergo this level of training for as much. It's still a highly technical job that requires a lot of ability. Well, we don't make as much as people as top execs. We don't make as much as bankers in London. We don't make as much as any of these people. Okay. In the US, at the end of your career, you can make quite a lot of money. But it's not, it's not if you want to make a lot of money, there are probably other jobs where you can make a lot of money. Now it depends, because if you're in your early 20s and you're starting now as a co-pilot and you enter an airline like Ryanair when you're 21, now you make a lot of more money than any of your friends. You'll be a captain by the time you're 25 and you'll make a lot of money. And maybe towards when you're 35 or 40, some people from your school will overtake you if they've been successful in business. But I would say, just to sum it up, it's not necessarily a career where you make that much money. Okay.
Okay. And I think besides money, although I really did appreciate your insight on this, I think besides money, there's also a thing that people talk about a lot when they think about pilots. So, for example, work-life balance. And I wanted to ask you, because you have more insight in this than I do personally, that do you have any personal routines or maybe even like rituals, something that keeps you grounded outside of the cockpit?
Yeah, work-life balance is, I think we discussed this already. It's a problem. This is a profession that does come with sacrifice. I think we hinted at it at the beginning of this talk. It comes with a lot of sacrifice, a lot of getting up early, coming back really late, your family having to tiptoe around the house, family breakups, relationship breakups. So it comes at a lot of expense, so to say. And you also need to be ready for your flights and be in the right mindset when things happen at home, and they've happened and you left the door of your home with an unhappy situation behind you, and you have to now somehow find a way to arrive adequately fit in your mind to run the flight in the safest way. So at all of these milestones that can happen, you need to find ways to center yourself. So I personally used meditation as a technique that I discovered later in life. The idea is to try and do the right thing always, try to do the next best thing always, and to be in the present. But these are things that I discovered later in life. I personally went through some personal crises, and again, we're going to talk about money here a bit. If you're younger, and I think the fact that my generation went through this didn't change anything to the new generation, you tend to believe what society is telling you is success, which is you study to a high academic level, you make money, you buy things, you end up getting married, and you have a big house. Okay, that's the idea. That's if you have got a big house and a nice car and a lovely family, that's what success is. And you realize after a while that making all this money would cause you stress, because you need to protect it now, somehow invest it and do the right thing with it. That buying the bigger car doesn't make you happier, except for maybe a month, but now you've got a bigger loan to pay on your car. That buying the bigger house also comes with a bigger mortgage. And that the person that was supposed to make you happy, on which a lot of pressure was put on by society as a whole to make you happy, and you were supposed to make them happy, if that doesn't happen, now what? So the accumulation of things, or the attempt to attain what society has made for you as a goal, all of this can fall on its head if something goes wrong all of a sudden. And
I
you see what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I totally agree with it, because I don't know if you actually heard about this, but there was a research done that even if you achieve like a great success, let's say you win the lottery, after some time, your happiness level decreases and it goes back to normal, just as if you didn't win the lottery. So it's actually an important thing to think about, that we should always strive for, of course, we should strive for success, whatever that means to you, and strive to do better than we were yesterday. But at the same time, finding a way how it is sustainable for you, that then every day you can find, excuse me, And every day you can find something that makes you happy, that makes you fulfilled. That would be very important. So, for
Yes.
example,
Yeah. So
yeah,
sorry.
go
No, no,
on.
no. Go for it. No, no.
I just wanted to mention that actually there's a kind of theory that we can also use in our personal life, but also in work too, which is called self-determination theory. It talks about three different parts, how people feel motivated and fulfilled in their lives. So, for example, we should always have autonomy, something that how we can feel control over our life. So that can be choosing the career path. Like, let's say me, I had the autonomy to tell my parents that I would love to get into aviation, but in a different way, maybe not as a pilot, but as a psychologist. And also, it's important to feel competence, that you feel skilled and effective in what you do. That can be when you talk to yourself after a flight that, yeah, this is what I did right. This is a challenge that I handled well. And of course, to have relatedness to other people. When you have those kind of people around you who try to help you to become better, and you can feel this, so it can be through mentoring, for example, but also through people who are working together with you or people who are at home with you. And maybe here I could ask you, because that is, I think it connects quite well here, about your definition of success. And I think you mentioned this before too, how it can also shift and how you can be fulfilled in different ways in life at different times. So,
Yeah.
what do you think? Did this shift for you in your 20s, 30s?
No, it's a good transition with what I also was mentioning before. When things fall on their heads, so to say, it's usually when you get through a crisis that you realize that something's wrong. Something's wrong. It's the way you were doing things doesn't work, or what society told you is happiness was after
Yeah.
all flawed because it was bound to break at some point. So in my case, I flew for BA, then I went to Emirates, where my life Emirates brought me a lot as an airline, but also my personal life had lots of struggles in those days. My wife ended up going back to France, and it started a really difficult process. And it's like, okay, well, I tried to be successful. I tried to go where I could have a career that would go a bit quicker. This is why I moved to Emirates. It's as simple as that, right? I like the idea of Emirates, but I loved BA. I went because I could be a captain a bit quicker, and I started a bit later. I joined BA when I was 32. You see, so I thought, can I really be a co-pilot during the whole of my 40s? That was a driver for me. Somehow I wanted to become a captain, and I wanted to spend my active years as a captain. Anyway, what I thought were my active years. It's interesting because now I'm a bit more than 50, and I feel super active. So anyway, that was the way I pictured it. And when this happened, I felt failure. A failure in my personal life, and it happened roughly at the same time as I became a captain. Actually, interestingly enough. So I think to me, the definition of success is that to have your life in balance. It's not how much money you've got at all, really at all. It's how balanced your life is. And to balance my life at that point, I ended up turning to spirituality. So I didn't do anything unusual. I ended up just going to do a yoga retreat and try and recenter myself. For me, it was a matter of survival almost, to stay sane, because I went through a midlife crisis very clearly. I could still function, I could still fly, no problem. I became a captain during that time. And it's very common. The more you expatriate yourself, the more you bring elements of destabilization, the more this could hit you hard. Okay, and it did hit me. I mean, I like to talk about it because young people now who are watching this need to understand the implications of what they are doing. And it's interesting because you can see a lot of youngsters when we meet them at ATOs and when I talk to them as clients, that I'm happy to be in a low-cost airline because I want to be in my own bed every night, have the life of an airline pilot, but also have the family that other airline pilots can't get when they do this or that type of job. And I find that's a very mature way of being and a really valid way to lead your life. So my advice is to be interested of what balance means to you, and not be someone, you have your right to be career focused and to be very ambitious. There's nothing wrong with that. Just try and take stock sometime and go, okay, is what I'm doing going to have consequences that I later in life I'll have a very big difficulty to unwind? Is it just my ego here that I want to have the bigger house on the street? And how happy am I really going to be like this? There's an interesting saying by one of my favorite authors called Eckhart Tolle. He was unhappy on his bicycle, and now he's unhappy in his BMW. And if this is you, you know that something's wrong. It's not having a better car, it's fixing yourself. If you're someone who gets angry at people, if you're someone who's often complaining about the state of the world, there's actually nothing wrong usually with other people. It's how you react to them. I've learned all of this. That's allowed me to become happy and accept what life is throwing at me. And you know that my life, and it's interesting because I found that what makes me happy is being in balance in many ways. And why did I create ASP? Because I like helping others. I found that this was a way where when I am with you now, or when I am with a client on a consultation, on a call, I'm in the present. I'm in my area of talent, in an area where I'm naturally happy. And when I see someone who's progressing, and this is what makes me happy. So life has taken me to this realization, and I realized, okay, for me, it's much better doing this than bringing 300 passengers from A to B, even though it also does change their life that this happens. Someone else could do this in my place. Whereas maybe what I'm doing here, I'm putting my heart into it, and maybe this is where I belong. So it's taken me time. So I think my advice to anyone young or even less young, because at the end we have emotions and ambitions at all ages, is to try and think that for themselves and what does success mean for them. And I would bet that if you think it's about having money, that one day this is going to create you problems. Not 100%, just I don't want this for you. Okay. And if you have your intentions in the right place, if your heart is in the right place, success will come naturally. That's really what happens. But thinking that you want something out of life, typically money, before actually giving something, it's not always that it really happens the way you planned. So my idea would be, if you're really motivated about airplanes, being the best pilot you could be, being the friendliest crew member you can be, being knowledgeable and looking how you can help others as well in an airline, this is actually going to make you fulfilled and successful. But then everybody's different, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I really agree with what you're saying, and also how success can really look different in different ages.
Yeah.
Because again, a personal example, I recently turned 26, and at the same time, I always am. Yes, and at the same time, I always imagine myself to have let's say, I imagine this kind of structure, what I would achieve by the time I'm 25 or 30. And then currently, I'm also living in a time when I am experiencing that, okay, but is this really how I feel fulfilled in my life? Let it be a job or personal life. And it's perfectly fine to change your definition of success at any point of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the younger generation, they are better equipped. It's more okay these days to be vulnerable than it was maybe in the past times. There's more education around that, and I went to do, when I went to do my yoga retreat, I did another retreat with Eckhart Tolle. I went to Canada for it. It was both times. It was the same year. I was really not feeling great at that time, and I remembered seeing people who were 20-year-olds in this retreat. In the yoga retreat, we were just 12, so there was one young person, a young guy from California, very nice. And his mother was a yoga teacher, so that's why he knew that this was something. He was confronted to that very young, and he was so balanced. He was such a nice guy, and he just came there to maintain his spirituality, and he was 22. I kept on thinking, how lucky are you, to have found this at this age. And at the Eckhart Tolle retreat, there was a lot more people, maybe 600. It was very powerful, even though it was a lot more people. And you had lots of 20-year-olds. And that they just didn't want to live in this life that speeds up all the time. And they wanted to find out who they are when they are in the present. Beautiful. If you can access that when you're young, it's just, you're going to have such a good life.
Yes, exactly. So, well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. I actually don't think I have any more questions for this session.
Well, let's leave it there then. It's a pleasure to see you, Dana, and a pleasure to communicate with you, with our audience always. You know where we are. We are here for you. We love to create this content because we think it's important that it's out there in the world. And we will see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Perfect. Pleasure is mine. See you later.
This podcast was brought to you by Airline Selection Program, a company that is focused on helping you succeed at airline selections. Our flagship course, Advanced Interview Course, has helped hundreds of pilots just like you become successful. Visit our website at online.airlineselectionprogram.com and find out how you too can get the job of your dreams.